bunch of very cool folks here on stage. Thank you so much for joining, guys. I have a few questions for you. We have a second mic, that's perfect. Let's start by letting everyone know what you do, and then I'll kickstart the question. No, it's not. Try again. Yeah, take this one.
Cool. How's it going, everyone? My name's Glenn. I work at Alchemy, which is a leading Web3 infrastructure platform. I lead the sales development team at Alchemy, so basically all new kind of like business acquisition and new customers come through my team. What Alchemy does in 30 seconds, at the base level, we run nodes on 40 plus different networks. Historically, a lot of folks know us for EVM. However, we have a growing presence in Solana as well. On top of those nodes, we build enhanced data APIs to abstract away a lot of the complexities of fetching, querying, and loading in on-chain data for things like token balances, transfers, NFTs, etc. And then on top of that layer, additionally, we have the industry-leading smart wallet application, actually by a factor of 3x. We have the largest number of deployed smart wallets on chain. We just announced 2 weeks ago Solana support for that. Historically, it had only been EVM, so super excited about that. And then additionally, in the EVM world, we have the leading rollup as a service offering and have powered WorldCoin's rollup, among many others. So excited to be here with this group of amazing panelists.
Thank you, man.
Hello. All right. Michael here, one of the co-founders at Blast. What we do is we call ourselves the first shared computer. So basically, we're a decentralized compute network. You can download the Chrome extension, or you can download a Docker native build from us and contribute your idle resources, right, on your gaming PC or on your laptop. And we basically pull everyone's resources together and resell them to developers, right? So as a developer, you can deploy anything that converts to WebAssembly, so onto our network. So right now, functional workloads, Lambda type of workloads where you can directly deploy. On the network, we also have native JavaScript support. So we just released our command line interface yesterday, and basically right now.
Congrats. Say congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, and so we're in testnet still. Right now we have 4 million registered nodes across the globe and 1.8 million daily active nodes. So we've gathered a lot of compute, and right now we're getting into a new stage where people can make use of this compute and for free. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lena. I am the founder of Offline. We're a public good under Solana Foundation that originally started with helping build out the New York City community here, and we've since hosted 22 plus events around the world. Basically, we host side events at conferences, panels, parties, mixers, workouts, you name it, in an effort to get investors, developers, and founders offline in various environments. We've built a 7,000 person community, and it's growing every day. So really glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Congrats.
Hey guys, I'm Terry. I work on Eclipse. I'm on the strategy side, very amorphous type of title. Just means you strategically work on different things. We're building an SVML2 on Ethereum. Great to meet you all.
Thank you. So first question is very general for all of you guys. What are the current trends right now? Web3 and AI at the crossroad. What's happening and what's exciting at the moment?
Yeah, so I'll quickly share like 4 that are really exciting to me, and I'll try to stick with novel use cases, but this is a smart room, so apologies in advance if you've heard of them. But 4 that I'm particularly excited about, one of them is actually using AI agents to fully automate liquidity flows across various blockchains. One of the major challenges that we have right now, like compared to traditional finance world, is that blockchains are still relatively illiquid, right? It's not as much of a challenge in Solana, but let's say you want to go from Solana to ETH or to Bitcoin or something like that. This is like a very complex kind of operation to do, right? So we've already had things like solvers and a lot of interesting solutions there, but when you combine that with AI agents, I just think there's a lot of exciting kind of potential that can be had there. Anytime that you increase liquidity in markets, you're also going to increase capital velocity, you're going to attract more sophisticated participants. I just got back from the Digital Assets Summit over in Javits this week, and I can tell you this is top of mind for pretty much every large institution. So teams in that space that are kind of building solutions there, I think are exciting. The second category, I think
Then just on the first one,
yeah.
What do you mean by increasing liquidity? I think it's interesting to just deep dive into that.
Yeah, so let's say for example, EVM DeFi ecosystem, and there's still much more liquidity than Solana, even though one might argue Solana has a lot of compelling advantages, right? How do we get that over is not an easy thing, right? Or let's say you're a sophisticated market participant and you want to trade in and out of these different ecosystems in an automated fashion. In theory, the technology exists, but in practice, we haven't seen a ton of implementations there, and I think an agent-driven model there would be really cool.
It's kind of a UX kind of improvement, right? If I may say.
Totally. Yeah.
The agent will help you move from one chain to another, do some operation in DeFi.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one other one I'll just share is kind of what Les is doing, I think, right? If you look at all the total compute in the world, it's measured in flops or something like that. Yeah, it's a massive number that's relatively impossible for a human being to comprehend how much compute is in the world. At any given time, on average, 30% of that is sitting idle, right? So that's a massive kind of capital expenditure problem, just not very efficient. This whole concept of decentralizing and democratizing, I think, access to GPU, compute, stuff like that on a global scale is really cool. It's been going on for a while before AI became a hot thing. For context, my dad, who's worked at IBM for a long time, was telling me about this 15 years ago. So people have been working on this for a while, but it's not fully productionized at a scale where it's accessible to everyday people, right? So I think with AI agents, and also just some of these decentralized compute platforms like what Bless and others are doing, it really opens it up to where you could be contributing to this from your phone or computer. And then the important part is it being permissionless, right? The stuff that existed 10, 15 years ago was not permissionless. It wasn't a way where you could really get rewarded in any way, at least that was meaningful, for contributing to that. So that's another area I'm really excited about, and maybe for the sake of time, we'll pass to someone else. But.
Yeah. I think so. From the Bless front, do you want to elaborate on the compute problem and why is it such an inflection point now?
For sure. So when we talk about decentralized compute nowadays, you may see a lot of projects talking about, we do decentralized training, but to be honest with you, this is still very difficult, simply based on the limitations of this physical world, right? Naturally, if you have some cars that are sitting together in one machine, that is just more efficient, right? If you're talking about multiple machines, right, that are doing training, even federated learning, right, it's just very difficult, right? For example, right, if I hire, say, 100 machines across the globe, and I tell them, hey, you guys all work on this same thing, right? And some of them fall offline, and I may have to retrain the whole thing over again, right? And so if I want to avoid that, I will need to add in redundancy, right? Which then makes everything a bit more expensive, right? And also is very slow. So this is just not very competitive at the current stage compared to the centralized models. But when it comes to inferencing, the decentralized compute model actually has an edge, right? So when we're talking about leveraging everyday computer, like your consumer devices, right? These devices, right, if they're doing inferencing jobs, right, no matter for your personal AI agents or for something else, right, or if it's running a service for someone else, they're actually much, much closer to the end user than the service, right, which may be hundreds of miles away, right, for some places. So this is an area that we're very interested in, and for us, right, we have a lot of nodes, we tap into a lot of computers, and this will be one area that we will continue to research on, right. Another thing, just to add on to this, I feel is more interesting, and people are getting more realization over it's. I'm crypto class of 2017, and people have been talking about this decentralization, this concept for some time, right? We're talking about why do we need decentralization? Why is decentralization? Why is community ownership? Why is verifiability good, or why is it needed at all, right? And I personally feel that the rise of AI right now is actually giving us the strongest argument for decentralization and verifiability. So this whole argument of Web3, right? A couple of months ago when DeepSeek just came out, right? Everyone's are we're all quite impressed by its capabilities, but then there are people talking about, oh, I don't want to use DeepSeek because I don't know if like the Chinese government is behind it, right? And I feel I'm talking to this AI, but it's really someone behind it manually answering to me, right? And it's injecting some CCP agenda, right? You just don't know, right? So there are people already making arguments in this in the traditional way, right? And it brings about the idea of, as AI is taking care of more aspects of our life, increasingly, right? Increasingly more. How do we make sure this process is not completely a black box, right? How do we make this compute actually verifiable becomes increasingly significant to our lives? So, and in Web3, we actually have a lot of technology, right? No matter it's zero knowledge proof, no matter it's trusted execution environment or consensus models, right? That we have been using, right? All of these could be very useful in creating a verifiable computing system, right, for AI inferencing. So I think this will be one of the more meaningful areas down the road.
And just one extension. Where do you see the most compute now in decentralized compute network on the planet? Which region is producing the most compute at the moment?
Which region is producing the most compute? I think for me it's going to be biased because it has to do with our own network participation. But like we are actually seeing a lot of underdeveloped countries, right? Because to be honest, we're a token project and people are opting into our token project and they're expecting like an airdrop, right? So we do see a lot of Southeast Asia participation. We do see a lot of US participation as well. So people where they're like just farming airdrops, right? And some of those people are actually with very powerful machines. So yeah, that's where they are. But I do expect this to slightly more after we get onto mainnet.
Nice.
So my background is more so marketing and community building. So I'm sure you all heard about the social security leak that happened in the US. Something that particularly excites me more so is that around digital identity and proof of personhood trends. So obviously with AI becoming part of the narrative and joining the blockchain, just blockchain overall, I think from that point of view, utilizing smart contracts and tokenization across the board will help us obviously initiate that, and there's a lot of really cool companies doing that across the board. So I think there's a lot of proof of personhood trends that need to happen and be integrated more so in the space. So.
I'm sure a big part of your job is being automated as well now. AI is impacting a lot in marketing, right?
Just adding on to what the rest of the people have said. So number one, there's AI agents that act as capital intermediaries for portfolio rebalancing strategies, or there's rebrands of quantitative strategies that frankly have adverse selection that people put out there, and now they're AI agents now. Number two, there's marketplaces where you can buy idle compute resources related to booming of AI in traditional markets. Now there's a bunch of idle resources, I want to use it. Number three, there's decentralized or verifiable inference. And in addition to that, there's the ability to access that inference as part of an execution environment via a coprocessor, so Open Gradient, they're working on something like this. You're a chain, similar to how you might say, hey, Chainlink, give me a price feed. You say, hey, can you give me like an LLM inference? They spit something back out, you can reuse it as a callback. Or there's chains that specifically have AI inference built into their execution model. So you say, you just call some precompile, here's my input, you get an output, it's directly in the smart contract. So those are kind of the overarching themes. And then of course there's things that are kind of more frontier, like decentralized training and like federated learning, et cetera. And there are different people working on implementations and blockchain melding of implementations around these. So these are kind of largely the four areas. I think it is up to us to decide which ones are people who see that it is a hype thing in Web 2 and decide that capital will allocate where attention will allocate in crypto, and therefore are melding these two in an artificial way that doesn't quite make any sense, and then which ones are where it actually has a substantive difference in the product itself.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all feel a bit the hype about I'm launching an AI agent, which is just, it's a piece of code. Basically, what do you do with it? And we already seen this piece of code, actually. It's already happening on the traditional market. Thank you, guys. I want to ask a question about the infrastructure, maybe to you, Bless. How do you differentiate with the other infrastructure project? Like, And I know, please, Clem.
So like, if you look at like what's happened with AI agents recently, it was kind of like a Cambrian explosion, right? If we're talking about like the on-chain ones, like there was just a ton of these projects coming out, like everything was kind of like pumping like for a long time, and now we've seen like major corrections pretty much across the board on a lot of those. I think like there's definitely like some good projects there, but if you look under the hood, the majority of them, I don't know exact percentages, but maybe like 70–80% of them are just like wrapping like another LLM model and then adding some basic on-chain functionality. There's nothing like truly innovative there, and I think like we've seen like a big correction in the AI Web3 kind of like agent-specific area as a result, right? So how do we build back from here, like for the future, and build projects that are sustainable and like contributing actual value for the future? It might sound like overly simplistic, but I think like a lot of these projects don't just do basic like customer research or like start with a problem and work backwards from there. I think a lot of what we've seen is at the forefront and is more experimental, which personally I think is really cool, and I love playing around with them and experimenting them. But at the end of the day, like it doesn't necessarily make my life better, like unless I happen to be financially successful on one of them, which doesn't really happen the majority of the time, right? Because it's very hard to time the market. So like one example I think of someone who's doing it really well is Perplexity, right? I mean, this is already an established company, it's not a crypto focus, but they took like a product that solves a real problem, which is like, Google is amazing, I do a bunch of Google searches, but it might take me like 4 or 5 searches to find exactly what I need. I have to go through like several pages, right? You all know how Perplexity works, but like it drastically cuts down on that kind of process. But then Perplexity said, okay, now how can we like introduce the on-chain or crypto portion in a way that's actually going to be helpful, right? And so they work with Alchemy as well as like running some of their infrastructure in-house. But they're able to like query the chain and like show meaningful kind of on-chain data for those queries, right? And via the Twitter API integration, now you can tweet at Perplexity and ask it questions about crypto projects and get real-time market data. So that's like a way where like, sure, you could have already used Alchemy to do that if you were a developer, and you could have built the queries and done it on your own, but now all of a sudden like you're able to basically be your own quant or analyst, right? And so maybe with that, maybe I'll be better at trading the other AI agents now, but I just think that's cool and it's practical, and it's one example of like working backwards from a problem. So it's simplistic, but that's the biggest thing I think that will make a difference.
I think, and sorry to interrupt, but if we would have removed AI from the term, the discussion will be much like nicer, I think, because it's a bit like AI agent sounds like, I mean, the word is misleading. Like it's just a piece of code with a model behind. Just all remember that. Like it's not because it's called an AI agent that it's going to be trading very well or saving your life for sure.
I think for me, one observation that I had lately is, especially compared to the previous cycles in crypto, right? The previous ones, 2018, we had DeFi summer, and then we have NFTs, we have this and that. Every cycle, there's always like a central narrative that everyone just follow behind, and now people are like, okay, what's the next thing, right? No one really knows what's the next thing, and I kind of felt like this is a good thing, because previously everything is kind of, our marketing people would talk to me and be like, hey, all it matters is marketing. Everything else doesn't matter, right? So in previous cycles, this is kind of true, right? If you just follow a particular trend and you kind of market your project in a particular way, and your ROI is really high, right? But right now, the market doesn't really have a overarching thesis anymore, right? But it is also in this market that we have a lot of money in here, right? Bitcoin's trading very high, right? Ethereum's trading very high, and lots of VCs investing. A lot of talent has already been attracted to the industry, right? There are a lot of teams out there, thousands of teams that have raised funds from the previous bear market, and everyone's building right now. And now suddenly, compared to the previous cycles, right? People used to have, this guiding star. Okay, we just go after this narrative. Right now, there's no more narratives, right? The only thing these people and capital can do is to find their own product market fit, right? There's no central narrative anymore. They have to go into their individual respective niches, right? And try to figure out, okay, how exactly is my business going to make money, right? just as a traditional business, right? Not as necessarily a token project, because to be frank, there are too many token projects out there, right? There's not enough attention for individual one of them, right? So right now, all these teams with great talent and with a lot of capital, they're pushed into the corner. They have no other way to go. The only way for them is to build a product that people want to use, like you said, something very useful, actually useful for each one of us. So I think we're gradually leaving the first phase of the crypto industry where everything's kind of speculative and immature, and possibly some people say scammy, right? I think we're leaving that phase, and we're getting into a new place where it might be more traditional, less exciting, but a lot more useful things will come out.
Nice. I want to go back a bit closer to the subject for this particular place. We are in Solana offices here. You guys are building on Solana, on Base. Want to tell me why do you think Solana is going to happen more? AI is going to happen more on Solana than on another chain?
Yeah, so I'll start. Solana is where the liquidity is. It's where a lot of the users are. Obviously, low transaction fees, lots of users. People don't want to wait 20 minutes for a transaction to go through and so forth. I'm obviously biased, but from that perspective, it really just comes down to use case and so forth and scalability across the world. And from that perspective, Solana's been home for me. It's where I started my crypto journey on actuality. So I would love to just hear more from you guys how it's been beneficial for other ecosystems too.
I think you've covered it, like with the exception of the fact that this is where liquidity is, where users are, this is where attention is. There's no particular ingrained mode for anything to launch, particularly anywhere, with the exception of scalability, cost, as well as perhaps like intertwined fee structure considerations.
So the first thing to consider is, do you want Jesse Pollock promoting your tweets, or do you want Merv promoting? Once you've decided that, now you know your chain. No, I'm joking. So I think there's a lot of benefits to both, right? We support builders on both Base and Solana Alchemy, so I think we have kind of a unique perspective into this. On a personal note, I've been a Solana user since 2020. I loved transacting on ETH mainnet for many years, like prior to that on L1. But obviously, I don't need to tell this room like what the challenges are with that. So like Solana just felt like a breath of fresh air. I created my like Solid wallet, which was like the crappiest. Like we complain about UX now, like that was significantly worse. I remember it was just in a browser. There was no even like Chrome extension or anything. And so I was playing around there, but like the chain just feels magical, like the first time you use it in comparison to like ETH or anything like that. So I think like these folks said, like the advantage is like you're going to be able to bootstrap easily with like a retail kind of audience, because the reality is it's much easier for users to onboard onto Solana today compared to the ETH L2s, right? So whereas there might be more retail liquidity on Solana right now, the real capital, quote unquote, like the big money in terms of TVL and institutional funds is still all in EVM. So I'm not bearish on Base by any means. I think like, personally I'm placing bets on Solana over Base. This is a personal statement, not a company statement. I'm also very bullish on Monad, right? So like to me, it's not about like Solana versus ETH. It's more about like monolithic versus modular. I think like modular thesis has some very compelling points and like some strengths, but given the current state of UX and what I was going to before, where like it's really hard to get liquidity around on these rollups, like we're still a little ways out. And if the ETH community can solve those challenges, then I think that could still kind of win in the long term. The question is it going to happen on a Monad or on a Solana or something like that first before they can catch up, right? And I think outside of that, like the tooling, the reality is the tooling is still much better on Base. Alchemy is known for like our docs, and it's not just us. There's like a ton of other amazing resources there. We've had 70,000 people graduate through our Solidity development courses, right? So like, there's a lot of like help and resources available, but that's going to change over time. Like there's 40,000, or I actually don't know the number. There's a lot more Rust developers. It might be 400,000. I think I'm off by a factor of 10. Compared to only maybe like 20 or 30,000 Solidity developers. So like in theory, I think Solana could be a lot more, but we just don't need to build the tools, education, resources, things like that to get it, to kind of the relatively easier developer experience on EVM.
Yeah, I think for me, the base ecosystem, the advantage of that is it's a layer two, right? You can use your ETH, you can use your Ethereum assets, right? And everything even for developers is very familiar, right? You don't have to relearn anything. Like for us, we have our own Rust developers that are doing, very low level peer-to-peer work. But when we have some needs to develop like smart contracts on Solana, they have to start from the scratch, right? And learn everything over again. So even though Solana has a lot of the Rust engineer base, there's still some learning to do. So this is I think one advantage that base has over Solana. But on the other hand, I would say as a project we picked Solana over base because two reasons. One is as of now I think Solana has been out there for quite some years. And we would consider it to be more beta tested. And also, on the other end, we see at least it has more, I would say, lively community, right? People are freely launching memes, doing all kinds of innovative things up here, and we simply enjoy the vibe. Yeah.
And on the Eclipse side, I think that's a question that's literally what you're solving, right?
Could you repeat the question?
The question is, do you think AI is going to happen on Solana and why?
Oh yeah, my answer was ultimately that like there's no strategic like hard-grown technical moat. It's ultimately like insofar as you can satisfy the computation scale requirements as well as the fee requirements for the application in question, then it's ultimately a distribution game. And I think the answers have largely pointed to that as well, right? Like you launch on Solana over say Arbitrum because you know for a fact that you're going to get more users, more transactions, more volume, more liquidity. And ultimately, that is the reason. Also, one thing to note, and I talk about this a lot, I think a lot of people in the Solana community agree with this as well, is that moat is actually quite flimsy. And to be aware of the fact that moat is quite flimsy is very important because ultimately, prior to 2023 even, who had all of that was Ethereum. And now it's Solana, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because you have it today, you will have it in the future.
What is currently missing on the in Solana ecosystem, you think, to really power applications like Perplexity and etc.?
Yeah, I mean, well, now I'm going to chill a little bit. So what's missing is full Alchemy support across Solana, right? There's a reason why we power 70 out of the top 100 dApps when you look at dApp Radar and EVM. The reality is we are not the first name that comes to mind when you think of Solana developer infrastructure, right? It was kind of a conscious choice for us to double down on EVM for a number of years. I think the writing is on the wall that Solana is here to stay. I think if you stay tuned for the next 6 to 12 months, you're going to see a lot of exciting things coming out. And I think if you think about who are the top players in Solana infrastructure today, I think that might look a bit different next cycle. Yeah, we're throwing the whole kitchen sink at it. It's going to be exciting, and stay tuned.
I'm going to be I'm going to be very biased here. I mean, I to be honest think we've in the past years built a lot of infrastructure for layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3, layer 4, perhaps. I mean, Alchemy supports most of the chains out there as well, and so does many other infrastructure providers, right? I honestly think we've done sufficient work in enabling the on-chain workflow this far. What I think is really missing, and this is not just applying to Solana, but all the other layer 1 ecosystems and layer 2 blockchain ecosystems as a whole, is the ability to process generic workloads. Like for example, right? We all know, and this is why we're still sitting here, we all know it is a pain in the ass to develop applications on the blockchain, right? And this is why, after so many years, we're still talking about adoption. We're still talking about how do we onboard the next million developers, right? And the truth is, it's just very difficult, right? It's not the most ideal platform. It's not like we're just having like a platform like Vercel, like AWS that developers can just use, right? And you don't see people building applications that would build on like an iPhone or on a PC directly on a blockchain, right? So when it comes to generic compute, right, no matter what it's storage or it's simple computing like serverless or long-run compute. The generic part of this, I think, is mostly still missing, and for us, we're obviously trying to solve this issue. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
What do you think is missing now in Solana ecosystem to have a tier 1 AI app?
I mean, from the perspective of high barrier to entry, learning Rust, in Solana, the Solana eco in particular, we say that it's like chewing glass and learning a language. So that said, there's some time to be onboarded to the ecosystem and crypto in general. It took me years to understand it, and I'm still learning every day transparently. So from that perspective, it really just comes down to patience, the willingness to make meaningful connections, the willingness to, attend hackathons and really just double down on things that are important to you as a builder and so forth. So attending events like this today is a starting point. If it's your first crypto event, welcome. And we hope to have you more.
Rust is amazing, I just want to add that.
High demand. I've seen hundreds of code processors over the years. I remember there were projects that were like, oh, you can use like event logs to structure like SQL databases via an on-chain interface. And so you can like process arbitrary amounts of data. I've seen things that were like, oh, you can have a coprocessor with arbitrary Rust compute, use standard libraries, and then prove that back on chain as a callback. I've seen people doing AI coprocessing, access LLM compute. And at the end of the day, what we haven't seen is people who want to use these things. So like ultimately, what stops a tier 1 AI company from coming in and using Solana? It's the absence of people who want to use these things. And that sounds like a weird thing to say, but ultimately, sometimes I really think about that statement that a lot of people in Solana say where there's only 6 smart contracts that matter. I really hope that's not true. I think there's a purpose to expressive compute. I think there's a reason to allow people to do anything they want to do and give them an expressive environment to try new things. So yeah, I do hope there is room for actually some AI compute on Solana in the future.
Nice. Guys, we have to stop the panel. Thank you so much for your time. Please, guys, give a round of applause for our speakers here. Thank you so much. Check out the project, there's amazing things. And so now I'm going to have the guy from Solana Foundation. I have some Eamon and Noah over there. Can you guys join me on stage? We're going to have a fireside chat with the two. Thank you so much, guys. Hello, guys.